Just a reminder, today's conference is being recorded. Joining conference.
Bruce Leahy.
Joining conference.
Sheila Robson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mayor Comrie. And welcome to our meeting. I want to thank you all for joining, and we're going to start with our roll call. And I have been listening as people have joined the audio call, so I think I know who's here. But I believe all the councillors are on, with the exception of Councillor Lamb. Am I correct, or are you there, Joe?
I'm here.
Oh, thank you. All right. So we have all the councillors. I believe the only, I think only I and Councillor Woods are on the video. Is that, and our CAO, Michelle Henry, is that correct? Okay.
I'm just on audio, Councillor Lamb. I'm just on audio.
Right. Yeah. I don't think any. If you're on video and you're not showing up, if you think you're on video, you might have joined another call. That's why I'm asking. But if somebody has tried to join video and they didn't get us, then speak up and let me know. Otherwise, I'll assume that's all that are watching the screen here.
Joining conference.
Lynn Brennan.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
I am now going to go down the rest of the list and just recognize the folks who are here and make sure that I haven't
Joining conference.
missed anybody. Somebody joined there, but I didn't catch who it was. Hello? Okay, so anyway, as far as our staff are concerned, our CAO clerk, Michelle Henry, is on. Fire Chief Bob Whitman is on. And Brian Sheridan, our roads and facility superintendent, is on. Have I missed anybody from the staff? Okay, then others whose names I heard: Lynn Brennan, Sheila Robson, Dan. Is it Chevins?
Jevons.
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 No.
Jevons. Sorry, Dan. Thank you.
No problem.
I catch that. Kathy Lamb is on. Dan Chernish is on. Doug Hickey is on, and Jane Lockwood. Have I missed anybody else?
Yeah, Bruce Leahy is on.
Bruce Leahy. Thank you, Bruce. Anybody else? Okay, all right. Thank you. We'll go with who we've got since we're past the starting hour, and maybe somebody else will join us as we go. And once again, a welcome to those of you who have joined us as members of the public. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and the time is 6:35 p.m. if you're watching the screen, not only a couple of us are, but if you're watching the screen, what you will see is a list of motions that have been prepared for this particular meeting, and we'll be going down through those. But the first thing I need to do is ask the councillors if anyone has a pecuniary interest to disclose before we start. And hearing none, I will let the record show that there were no conflicts of interest disclosed. Next item would be a motion to approve the agenda. And sorry, I'm looking at the wrong piece of paper here, but anyway. So the agenda as circulated, and I think everybody has the latest one. Could I get a mover and seconder, please?
I'll move it, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb.
Councillor McEwen.
Seconded by Councillor McEwen. Any discussion on the agenda? All right. Is anyone opposed to approving the agenda? Hearing none, we'll declare this to be the agenda. Thank you. The next item for which we have anything to do here is the consent agenda. And as you know, there is the procedure for the consent agenda is that we have an opportunity to pull out any items that people wish to discuss. Otherwise, if there isn't anything, the consent agenda would consist of the adoption of the regular council meeting minutes for April 6th, the special council meeting minutes for April 7th, and the list of unfinished business items, which are on page 3 of the agenda. So let's get a mover and seconder first, please, if I could, for the consent agenda.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Councillor Gorham Matthews. Seconded by?
I'll second, Councillor Woods.
Thank you. Is there anything that you wish to pull out for discussion?
Mr. Mayor, on 7.2 unfinished business, Councillor McEwen here. I'm wondering if we can have a quick update on the birds and animal bylaw.
Sure, we could do that.
Thank you.
Would you like me to do that?
Joining conference.
Gaston Venn.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch who joined the conference there. Can you say your name?
Gaston Venn.
Oh, okay.
V-E-N-N-E.
All right, thank you. Welcome, Gaston. Just trying to keep track of who's on the call here.
Thank you.
Yes, I think that's what we'll do. Since we have the motion on the floor, we'll just we'll just take a detour before we approve it. And Councillor Gorham Matthews, if you could, I'm assuming you're the one who can fill us in on where the animal bylaw is.
Yeah, I can give you a quick update that we sent it to our bylaw officers to have a look at, and they sent back some feedback, and we're just in the process of integrating that feedback, and then we'll have to decide how we can get it back to the committee to look it over again with the changes that we've made that the bylaw officers have suggested. I don't know, we'll probably have to have a teleconference or something since we can't meet in person now.
you know that we can set you up with a teleconference anytime you want, eh?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Does that satisfy your question, Councillor McEwen?
Yes, it does, Mr. Mayor. I was just curious to see if it was moving along at all with this COVID-19 stuff kicking around and everything and teleconferencing. Thank you.
All right. I haven't heard anything else coming up for discussion, so can I call the question, or is someone else trying to get it? No? Can I call the question on approval of the items in the consent agenda then, please? All those in favor. If you are opposed, please let me know. If I don't hear anything, I'll assume it's approved.
Joining conference.
Okay, hearing nothing, I will assume that the consent agenda has been approved as presented. Someone joined the conference call while we were just dealing with that item. Could I get your name, please?
Hi, sorry, it's Kevin.
Kevin?
Yes, correct.
I'm sorry, what's your last name?
Kissemetry.
Okay.
Yes, hello. I joined you earlier. It's Robert Dedman.
Robert Dedman. Okay, thanks. Thank you, and welcome. We'll carry on. We are now on agenda number 8, item number 8. We skipped over ones that we had no delegations or things of that sort. So that's why we're at such a high number. We haven't done 8 things yet. But anyway, the next one is the accounts payable. And if I could, please, could I have a mover and seconder that the council hereby approves accounts payable in the amount of $416,319.65 and payroll in the amount of $25,867.67 for payment. Mover and seconder?
I'll move it. Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Seconded by?
I'll second that. Councillor Woods.
Councillor Woods. Are there any questions or comments about any of the items that are in the accounts payable?
I have one, Mayor.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's number 34804 from Tim Dobby Consulting Limited, HR Consulting, in the amount of $69,4411 with HST and or GST, etc. It's $7711. I'm aware, I think, of the work that Mr. Dobby has done for us in regard to this, and it has to do with the recruitment, as far as I know, of the roads position that is available right now. And I just think we should not approve that, and I would ask the CAO clerk to go back to Mr. Dobby and discuss it, because to me it's way overboard and it's not justifiable. So I won't get into all the details, but I am aware of the work because I'm on the committee to look for this position, and I know we asked for Mr. Dobby's help, but I think that this is exorbitant.
Joining conference.
Cost.
Tom Murphy.
And I just think that this cost is not appropriate, and so I'd rather we don't approve this and we leave it up to the clerk to get back to Mr. Dobby for further justification in terms of what the process was, what the mandate was, what the objectives were, and what the outcomes were, and more justifying the costs.
Okay, well, I believe that the clerk has already done what you've asked, but I'll let her comment.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Madam CAO
yes,
clerk.
I did speak with Mr. Dobby this afternoon, and that voice will be refined, and he's going to send me something again tomorrow, and I'll have a look, and you'll see it again on council. So that's we won't be paying that invoice as stated on the agenda.
Thank you.
So do you wish to amend the motion to simply refer to say with the exception of item number, and I forget what number you said it was now, but
Well, I had it here somewhere. But yeah, amend the motion to just say with the exception of, just hold on, let me get it. Payment invoice number 34804 to Tim L. Dobby Consulting Limited.
Okay, let me just capture that. So, okay, with the exception of
invoice number 34804.
Okay, I've got that number 34804 to Tim L. Dobby, yeah.
Consulting Limited. With an LTD, not limited, just Tim Dobby Consulting Limited.
Yeah. So, no, we don't have friendly amendments, but since you're the mover of the motion, I've written it on as you've dictated it, so it says exactly what the motion said. Let me, I'm going to advance the slide here a little bit so those of us who are on the screen can see it. So it says that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby approve accounts payable in the amount of $416,319.65 and payroll in the amount of $25,867.67 for payment, with the exception of invoice number 34804 to Tim Dobby Consulting Limited. And that's moved by Councillor Lamb. Councillor Woods, are you prepared to second the motion as amended?
Yes.
All right then. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, Joe McEwen here.
Yeah.
Just to bring to the attention of the listeners that a big portion of our fee is purchase of a new Freightliner, and that's in the order of $323,000. So make up 400 and some thousand. That make up a big chunk of it. And just one comment on the Mr. Dobby situation. When I signed, the first person to initial his invoice and support it, there was supporting documentation there, and I did look for the breakdown, and there was a significant breakdown. We do pay a pretty good premium for this, so it adds up pretty quick when he does his hourly duties for us. So just to note that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion or comments? And thank you for the point about the truck. That is, of course, a very very major purchase, which will end up being financed. So we have to pay the bill, but it will be financed. It's not sort of coming out. It's not coming out of the current bank account, at least not in the long term. Any other discussion about these? Can I call the question then?
Well, just hold on.
Sorry.
Councillor, I just want to make sure. Councillor McEwen isn't suggesting, is he, that we don't pull the bill and that we pay it? I don't think he's saying that. Am I correct in assuming that?
That's correct, Mr. Lamb.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, as the clerk indicated, it did already get pulled because this question was raised, and the invoice is being revised. So we will get a revised one, and that will be taken out of the total that's indicated in the motion till we get a revised invoice. Okay.
Downward, I hope, right?
Yeah. That's my assumption, at least.
Good, and which speaks volume to my objection to it being paid. So thank you.
No. All right. So let me go down the list on this one, and I will just do what we normally do for something that's material: is get a is poll the count. When we have an audio conference, we poll the counselors. So I'll ask if you could just indicate your agreement with this. Councillor Gorham Matthews?
Yes.
Councillor Lamb?
Yes.
Councillor McEwen?
Yes.
Councillor Woods?
Yes.
And I'm in agreement as well, so that motion is carried. Thank you. We will pay our bills. So the next item sorry, just turning the page over here. We have a staff report relating to the supply, delivery, spread, and stockpile of granular materials. These are the materials that are used for our road work. I'll read a motion and then get a mover and seconder, and then we'll allow staff to comment on it if they wish. The motion I'm looking for is that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receives report PW 2020-01, supply and delivery, spread, and stockpile of granular materials for information, and that Council hereby waives Schedule C of bylaw number 14-2017, which is a bylaw to provide policies with respect to the procurement of goods and services, whereby purchases greater than $30,000 require the method of purchasing to be a request for tender. So we're asking for a waiver of tender. I'm going to just slide this motion up the screen a little bit here. And finally, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby awards the contract for the supply, delivery, spread, and stockpile of Granular A and Granular B to Car Aggregates Incorporated in the estimated amount of $90,000, including HST, for 2020. So you can see what is being asked here is to direct to single source procurement for this material, and I'll ask our CAO Michelle or our Road Superintendent Brian Sheridan, whichever one wishes to speak to this, to just explain the circumstances for folks.
Well, I can jump in, and then maybe our road superintendent. So normally, as the reports indicate, excuse me, we would go to tender in March for this and winter sand and a couple of other things. And because of the COVID situation, we have significant fewer staff in the office who would normally do this work, and it simply didn't, the work didn't get done. And so we looked at last year's tender and felt fairly comfortable talking to Car Aggregates, and they were the only bidder last year, and they have offered the prices for 2020 to be the same as 2019, and that's why we brought it forward. We do need the granular products as we move into May and late May and early June, we'll be spreading gravel on the road. So this allows the road maintenance activities to move forward without the effort of a tender this year, and simply being unusual circumstances.
Okay, thank you. Any further, Brian Sheridan? Anything further you want to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the CAO captured it spot on in terms of why we've done what we did and where we are. I think there's certainly benefit to carrying last year's price forward into this year. And we have the opportunity, if we wish to include the aggregates for the capital work that is proposed. And I haven't asked the contractor to include all of that in this bulk purchase because the capital budget has not yet been approved.
Okay, thank you. I meant to get a mover and seconder for this motion and didn't, so we better do that. Please, if I could have him.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move. Joe McEwen.
Councillor McEwen moves, seconded by Can I get a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Gorham Matthews. Any discussion?
I have a couple. When
Go
it
ahead.
comes to the granular needed for capital projects, which hasn't been approved yet, do we intend to tender that?
Good question. Go ahead.
Through you, Your Worship, that would depend on the circumstance. If we were at a point where we could add that to this tender and hold the price moving forward, then that would likely be the recommendation, because the tender for the capital works would be less than the quantity that we're purchasing in this agreement. And secondly, the capital works, a significant portion of that would be done by own forces rather than as part of a contract. So the value of adding the granular to a contract would not be in place.
Okay, I guess my concern is that we have a procedural bylaw and a procurement bylaw that requires a tender, and what I heard tonight was we didn't get to it because I thought we said we don't have enough staff. I'm not sure I 100% buy that, but anyway, you praise in public and criticize in private. But so my concern is that we're going around the procurement bylaw to approve this procurement of gravel, etc. I assume, and my question is, I assume that there's no evidence that aggregate is worth any less this year than it was last year. Because if it is, it's like buying propane and only the price has gone down and they're going to maintain the price from last year, which to me would be silly, right? So is there ever any evidence at all that if we put this to tender, that properly, as we should have done, that the price would be lower?
Michelle or Brian, do you want to address that? Yes?
Well, through you, Your Worship, I don't see any significant suggestion that the price will go down going from 2019 to 2020. And I guess part of the concern is that because of the limited work being done, the price may well increase without our ability to flex.
Okay, thank you.
Do we know if all of the suppliers that would normally tender on this are currently operating and supplying the aggregates?
Your Worship,
I'm
we
asking.
don't know. Yeah, we don't know, and certainly some of the potential suppliers, to the best of my knowledge, are not in operation at this point because of low demand. And certainly the price from other suppliers to the south tend to be higher than the rate that we had last year, even though that was our only bid.
I hate to be argumentative, but would low demand not necessarily mean that you get a lower price?
Well, aggregate in our, through your worship, aggregate in our area doesn't necessarily go by that factor. It has a greater tendency to be who's willing to provide it and supply it to your area. We tend to be right in the middle of different suppliers of product, and we don't often get the favorable prices.
Strange economics. I'm over. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on this item before we put it to a vote? Okay, let me try then to call the question, and I'll do it in the same way as before. I'll just go down the list and ask for your concurrence with this with this three-part motion. Councillor Gorham-Matthews.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb.
Reluctant, yes.
Okay. I don't have a box for the reluctant part on the voting paper, but anyway. Councillor McEwen.
Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, and I'm in favor, so that's carried unanimously, and we will make sure that we get a tender next year. I noticed in the chat for those who are online, I am seeing the question: there is no audio. Why is there no audio? If you are on the if you're on the Uber conference, we are not using Uber conference's audio, and the reason for that is that the folks who are, you know what, I'm going to have to put this answer on the screen because they're not going to hear me. But anyway, I'll just finish what I started to say. The answer is that we're using a separate audio package. The reason being that if folks just wanted to participate in the audio, they would end up incurring long distance charges to call the number that is associated with the Uber conference. And we're going to fix that for another meeting so we don't have this confusion. But anyone who wants to be on audio needs to follow the instructions to call the separate number. And I'm going to write that, if you'll indulge me for just a short delay here. I'm going to respond to the chat messages to explain to them how to get audio. I'm just putting the number down here.
Joining conference.
Okay, sorry for that delay, folks. I have replied to the questioners who were asking why they were not getting audio on on the call, because I see there are a few others who have come on. So hopefully they'll join us. I think at least one of them was there before, but anyway. Okay, so if I can then go back to...
Mr. Mayor, someone joined the conference. I don't know who it was. Someone just joined.
Can I ask who joined the conference? Well, they're not admitting it. Whoever it is trying to remain anonymous, which
Perfect.
I don't know. I guess we'll.
Doug Hickey just tried to join the Uber, but it won't work for me.
You won't get audio, but you should be able to get video. No?
Negative. I don't get either.
Well, I'm sorry about that, Doug. I don't know what the issue is, but I see...
It's okay. Don't worry.
It seems to be still...
Audio
it seems to be still... All right. It seems to be still going up. A number of the people on the call only have audio, but that was sort of... I thought that was their choice. I'm sorry if it's not working for you. Anyway, that takes us then to item 11, which is an item related to COVID-19 and various things that we're that we have done and might do in order to address this particular challenge. And so what I'm going to do is I think maybe because we need to have some discussion. There are some potential motions that we might that we might do, but we don't know exactly what they are until people speak. So I'm wondering, maybe the best thing to do would be to take just take one of these sort of standard motions, and I'll ask if we could go into committee of the whole, and that will allow us to speak without having motions on the floor. Could I get a motion that the Council of Municipality Whitestone does hereby go into committee of the whole. I'm writing this down. Committee of the whole at, and we'll say 7:08 p.m. to discuss COVID-19 related measures. Okay, so
I'll make that motion, Councillor Lamb.
Related measures. Thank you very much, Councillor Lamb.
I'll second that. Councillor Woods.
Seconded by Councillor Woods. Is anyone opposed? Any discussion? Or let's do this guy. Any discussion about that? Just to go into committee of the whole now.
Yeah, well, right.
We're not,
I want to clarify. Does this mean, Mr. Mayor, as I suspect it does, that others on the line who, technically haven't been able to weigh in would now get to weigh in with comments or questions of council or whatever while we're in committee of the whole? Do I have the correct assumption here?
That isn't automatic. It was my intention to permit people to speak, subject to, of course, to the approval of council. The two things, allowing the public to speak and being in committee of the whole, are in fact two separate things. The real reason we could, without going into committee of the whole, permit people to speak if at the discretion of the chair, if the council agrees, and the council could say, no, we don't want the public to speak, or we want them to speak, and and
I want them to
that's a separate decision. I'm assuming that you would like them to speak, or am I wrong?
I think it's their God-given democratic right to speak. So yes, I want them to be able to speak if they so choose to.
Well, that was my intention. So we'll assume that that's going to happen in the with this item.
Thank you.
Okay. Can I just call the question? Is there anyone opposed to going into committee of the whole? Hearing none, I will assume that we are now in the committee of the whole. And that, as I say, that allows us to have a discussion. Now, the first and perhaps the largest, if you look at the agenda, you will notice that there are three aspects of this that we wanted to talk about. And the main one, I suppose, I say that only judging by the amount of discussion that has already taken place, is has to do with boat launches, docks, and the public lake access points that we have in the municipality. And so that's agenda item 11.1.1, and I will start with that one. And then we have, when we finish with that one, we can talk very briefly about walking trails, which is 11.1.2. We have two walking trails, and Councillor Gorham Matthews had raised the question as to whether we were keeping them open or closing them. And the third item, 11.1.3, has to do with cottage rentals. And when we get to that item, the CIO clerk can advise us what has already been done, and again, we can have a little bit of discussion about that. So now the thing that I would, before we start down this list, or before we start into 11.1, I would just like to mention that councillors have received a report, and I don't know, I'm guessing that the public does not have this report. I could probably try to put it up on the screen for those of you who have joined if you want, but maybe because there are a number of people just on the phone, I'm going to have to I'm going to have to just tell you a little bit about it first. Can I ask first, is there any councillor who doesn't have the report? It came from our planning assistant, Paula Macri, this afternoon, and it is a spreadsheet that shows 17 public and private boat launches that are in the municipality of Whitestone. Has everyone on the council seen that list?
Yes, I have.
I have it.
Yes.
Somebody said I haven't. Was that Brian?
Oh, no, I have it.
I have it, Councillor Lance.
So all the councillors have it.
Yes.
Now, on that list, I would suggest to you that we don't have to, we can, for the purposes of tonight's discussion, we can ignore a couple of them because they're really not public boat launches. They're private, and or they are very minor boat launches. And the ones that I'm referring to are number 5, which is the Manson Lake boat launch, number 8, which is Ald's Landing. Ald's is, I'm sure, is classified as a marina, and therefore is or ought to be closed. It's on private property. Washkesh Lodge, which is the one run by C.E. Bennett Limited, which is their private property. Again, a marina, it's closed. Number 13, the Parker Bay Road boat launch is not used by the public anymore because of a decision of council some years ago to not to close it exactly, but to not list it as a boat launch. It's somebody's private property at the moment, and the public isn't using it. The one on Crown Retreats Road, which is number 15, which is again on that's on Fairholme Lake, and number 16, which is the one on Dubois Lake where the Echo Evergreen Campground is, and that's a private access. So we can take those out of the discussion for now because they're not. I think they're not. I mean, they're really not subject to our jurisdiction, and they're not likely to be a problem in any case. However, the rest of them, the 6 out of the 17, so that leaves us with 11, which are either on Crown land or on land that is owned by the municipality of Whitestone, and therefore they're a valid subject of discussion for us as to what, if anything, we want to do with them. And the only other thing I'll say, just to set the stage for this discussion, is that you will recall at our previous meeting of council, we made a decision that we would post signs on the boat launches, and they're on, I'm going to say most, but not all of those 11 that I mentioned that are up for discussion. And the sign basically says, use at your own risk, and practice physical distancing. That's all that it says. So there is a sign posted there, but that's enough. They aren't marked as closed, and they're not barricaded anyway. So that's the current situation. We have had requests. We've had a request from Ed Bennett, who runs Washkesh Lodge, to close the 2 that are on Washkesh that are on Crown land, and the reason that he wants to do that is because he runs a marina there, and his marina is closed. And so what people, when he advised his customers that the marina was closed, their response to him was, well, you give us our boat, and we'll put it in at the public landing, which he isn't supposed to give them the boat, according to his legal advice. But I think he felt that it was putting him in an awkward position and causing him some bad will with his customers, and that if the municipality were to close those boat launches, then he would be able to say, look, even if I give you your boat, you can't put it in. So unless, of course, they can find some other way to get it into the water. So that would, in a sense, make his life easier. And he also has pointed out to us that folks often come to him and say, oh, I was trying to back my trailer and I got it stuck. Will you come and pull me out? And in spite of him putting signs all over his property saying, we're isolating, don't self-isolating, please don't knock on our door, they come to him because he's sort of a logical source of assistance with things like that, and they've already had people, in spite of their signs, just coming knocking on their door or trying to buttonhole them, find them on the property and buttonhole them and say, hey, can you help me with this or that or the other thing? And he felt that if we were to close them, that would make his task a little of dissuading people from that sort of thing a little easier. So the other thing that I can just tell you about that is that I consulted with the MNR over a week ago just to clarify what their position was. We really do not have the right to barricade people and prevent them from accessing Crown land. There's no legal basis for us to do that. And so I asked my contacts at the ministry if there was some mechanism whereby we could be given the power to actually close these landings, and the last word I got, which was about 2 hours ago now, was that they are working on some mechanism to see if this can be done through some modifications of the land use permits or whatever, but they didn't have it resolved as of today, and I had asked them because we had a council meeting if maybe we could find out if that's possible. So the bottom line is we don't know, but I think the possibility exists for us to, to do various kinds of things, and we could, for example, we could post them as being closed, and we could advise everybody that they're closed, but simply not barricade them. If we do barricade them, then we may have to make some arrangement to allow people who have a legitimate need to access water access only property to do so. But there's various measures that could be taken, and so I'm going to leave it at that and let and let councillors speak first, and then and then we'll invite members of the public who have any comments that they want to make. Go ahead, councillors.
Who wants to lead it off? Councillor McEwen?
Go ahead, Councillor McEwen.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I know this is a very significant issue for a lot of people, both on the for and the pro and the con side of the whole thing. I guess it kind of goes to the government, Premier Ford's suggestion that both launches be closed, and one of his biggest comments, I suppose, is that it's a deterrent from allowing people to come on weekends. It's weekend traffic that seems to be the most concern, people coming and going and not coming and staying. So I know it's a really big deal, and we're heading toward fishing season and such as well. I looked up to see what the stance was and the situation was with respect to the anglers and hunters, and they posted quite a good article on it, and it's right up to date. There are 63 closures in the province, and this was posted in an article. The anglers and hunters are posted into this article. I guess the opening of some and closing of others, it just creates a whole lot of issues. But presently, we're sort of open for business, and we're one of very few, certainly in Prairie Sound, Muskoka neck of the woods, and even north, and locally in Prairie Sound District, our neighbors, McKellar, Carling, Prairie Sound, Seguin, McDougall, Archipelago, they've all gone, as we know, a couple weeks ago, and they've closed them, and in most cases, in some cases, barricaded them right out totally. So, big justification, of course, is the rescue people who have to go out and do things if there are issues, and close and upfront and personal with people with COVID-19. And as I just determined, there was an incident in Muskoka on the weekend, and lo and behold, the OPP and the rescue people didn't have their boats off dry land yet. And partly because of the COVID-19, and partly because all of a sudden spring did arrive. So there are some very serious issues around volunteerism and the rescue people who have to go out and do things that they really don't want to do, and the government doesn't want them to do it also. So I think those that we can close and send a message that we are not totally open for business, and I'll have an objection to this, of course. However, that's probably my bottom line on the whole thing. We'll close out, put chains across the ones that are necessary. I don't think it's necessary to totally barricade them all out with, such as McKellar did with their snowplows, their flushers off snowplows. Maybe a couple of situations, and Mr. Mayor, you mentioned Bennett. Maybe Bennett needs some kind of help back there beyond just being able to say it's closed and put up a sign. So anyway, I'll just leave it from there and let the discussion proceed.
Okay, thank you. Another counselor.
I'll go if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I feel along the same lines as Councillor McEwen. Not so much I'm looking for barricades or anything, but I think the message should be that our docks are closed to anyone other than a permanent residence that is water access only. If we support all these things that are coming down from the federal and provincial mandates to encourage people not to travel and remain in their homes, then the sooner, this can all be lifted. They're looking at the emergency ban on May 11th, I think around that date. So it's very possible at that date that some of these non-essential businesses that have been shut down will be given a little bit more freedom and access to being open. And I think if we can do everything we can in that meantime to discourage travel, it would be in everyone's best interest. I think a lot of people would be surprised if they do come up. A lot of the services and businesses that they rely on to help open up their cottages and businesses and their homes is unavailable right now. I think it's under the the Non-Essential Work Act. It says that you're not supposed to do any work on seasonal and secondary residences at this time. So if you got up here and there was an emergency within your place or within, while you're in your boat, you may not get the services that you need right at this time to make your trip here successful. I am kind of along the lines that any boating right now should be discouraged, not just to your cottage, but to anywhere, like to just go out for a joyride. I don't think we have the resources to ask our fire department or our paramedics to respond and use the precious resources that we have in terms of masks and gloves in an accident situation that really isn't necessary. I know I saw an OPP report saying there's an increase in ATV accidents right now, just simply because more people are at home, so they're looking for something to do. They're going out for an ATV ride, and then things happen. So it all comes down to the OPP, the province, everybody just asking everybody just to stay home, and I think that includes going out on the water.
Okay, thank you. Other councillors?
Yeah, I'll weigh in. I guess I'm going to be on the opposite side of this, so I apologize for. I don't have to apologize for doing it. I fail to see the logic in closing our boat ramps. I understand what people are trying to say. If you look at, yes, Carling and McKellar and other people have closed theirs. If you look at Magnetawan, they haven't closed theirs. They don't intend to. As far as I know, they intend to put their docks out and everything, right? So they're taking a different kind of stance to this. So we can't say one's right and one's wrong. We have to find a solution that's good for Whitestone. And I don't believe that we say we don't want to barricade them, but we should put a chain across them. That's barricading them. And I just don't believe that this is necessary. I keep saying, what's the logic? If the logic is that we're trying to keep people from going on the lake, let's deal with, we should be taking our keys from the provincial and the federal laws who are enforceable, right? What they're telling us is to distance ourselves. They're advising people not to come to their cottage, okay? They're not forcing them to not come to their cottage. And it's overreach, people. It's overreach to start saying, we're not going to let you put your boat in the water, right? Both locally, both the people that live locally and the rest of you that have your boat in your backyard, we're not going to allow you to put your boat in. Well, meanwhile, there's absolutely no restrictions on pleasure boats being put in the water. That does not exist. In fact, federally, there's been a law passed for ferries and everything else, and there's an exemption for pleasure boats, okay? So let's get out of our mind that, pleasure boats aren't allowed in the lake, and we shouldn't allow, and you shouldn't be allowed to have them in. Secondly, fishing season is not canceled. Right? Like, to put that out, you're putting boogeymen in front of everyone, right? People are responsible. Seasonal people, which are 80% of our population, and local people are responsible. There are exceptions both ways. Let's not divide our community by making this rule that you can't put a boat in. What are we going to do? Put a gate down at Whitestone and say, are you seasonal? Are you not seasonal? Or we're going to close you all off, right? You're going to hurt yourself. And to me, it's like slashing your own wrist saying, so we'll keep those people at bay. This is craziness. I think we've made the right decision in Whitestone, which is a balance between barricading them and doing nothing like Magnetawan, right? I think, and secondly, there's a whole bunch of them you can't close anyway. It's on M&R list. So it's a moot point for us to now, well, we'll close these three. And I'll just say to people, well, go put your boat in over there because we can't close that one. So it's a silly discussion in my mind. We're coming out the other end, hopefully, on this thing. And most people aren't going to put their boats in normally for 3 or 4 weeks. And I think it'll look a lot different at that point. I could go on, but I think that it's way too much overreach in our community particularly to do something like this. I don't think it means, what is it, a symbolic thing that's going to live with us for the next year or so because we've closed them off or us off or whatever. I just don't think it's necessary. Let's deal with the real issues, which are social distancing, okay, and groups of 5 or more. Let's deal with those issues. Let's not make boogeymen and start to chase down roads that aren't illegal. They're not illegal. So why are we trying to chase them? So that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Woods, did you have any comments you wanted to weigh in on before we open it up to the public?
Yeah, a couple, I guess. One, looking at the list that we got, I'm thinking there's one missing from there, which would be on Snakeskin. So I know there's a launch point there at Rainbow Airways. There's one, they're actually side by side, one that I think belongs to Rainbow Airways and then another one that anybody can use. I don't know if we actually own that or if that would be an M&R launch point. When this first came up and people started asking me this question, should we close them, my automatic first reaction would have been yes, just for safety. But then in thinking about it and doing some research and talking to different people, a lot of these that we don't own, like if we have land use permits on them, if we were to go ahead and close them, would that leave us open to a possible legal case? Like, could somebody sue us saying, well, the government doesn't say that we're not allowed to come here. They're advising that people stay home, but they ain't putting a ban on anybody. And like Councillor Lamb was saying, fishing season's going to be open. Even the Premier was on TV saying, no, I'm keeping fishing season open. He's an avid angler, and he'd like to see people going out fishing, but just to make sure they practice social distancing. And then, all of the communities towards Perry Sound ended up closing all theirs, but like Councillor Lamb brought up, Magnetawan's not closing theirs. They're even going to put their docks in. Like, I could see us saying we're not going to put our docks in. If everybody wants to close them, sure, but legally, would that put us in a bad spot? If someone, pulls out a lawsuit and says, you're denying me access, meanwhile you don't actually have the legal right to, even if we didn't, the person sued us and didn't get a judgment against us, it would still cost us money for legal fees. Like, I don't know if we're in a real hard situation. It would have been a lot easier if the province came out and said, okay, all the boat launches are closed. But with a lot of our launches, we don't actually have the legal ability to close them. And if we do, then it could cost us a lot of money.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not sure, just on that question, I'm not sure that we really know what the answer to that is. Unfortunately, as I say, what I was hoping was that we would get we would get a position from the government, and it's not lost on me that they have put the folks who operate marinas in a very difficult situation because they're not allowed to do things, but the public, to facilitate the public that they normally would serve and make their living by serving, and the public is frustrated enough at that, but then they're not really they're not prevented by the provincial or it would be provincial. They're not limited by provincial regulations from doing it, and of course it would make our life easier because we could just say, okay, fine, we have to close them, or perhaps the M&R themselves would take the necessary measures to close them, and then it would be out of our hands too. But anyway,
Mr. Mayor, can I ask?
I don't know if what I was going to say is I don't. We haven't obtained legal advice as to whether we could, what could happen if we in fact close them. We have been advised by the M&R, in fact, that we don't really have the authority to close them unless they figure out a way for us to do it, or they would have the authority to do it, but they'd have to somehow find a mechanism to delegate it to us. And it's possible that in the next few days they will come up with that, but we just don't know at this time, unfortunately. And so we kind of have to we're operating a little bit in the dark here. Anyway,
Mr. Mayor,
go ahead.
You asked our opinion, and I think you have the four councillors' opinions. I'd ask you to tell us what your opinion is on this matter.
Mr. Mayor, can we have a rebuttal also before we go to the audience? Thank you.
Yes, we can do that. I would say this. I have a couple of concerns about the whole matter, and the first one is that and by the way, I don't have any problem with us communicating to folks that this is not a good time to be coming to the cottage for a variety of reasons. And I think we all know what they are. I won't take the time, but there's lots of good reasons that have come up in the discussion tonight as to why you really ought to think twice about just saying, man, I got to get out into the fresh air here, and I'm going to take my boat and stick it in the water and go do whatever. But by the same token, there's for us to prevent people from accessing their properties, there is a class of person who is exempt from the marinas, for example. That closure is if someone's, and the closure of trailer parks and things. So, for example, if somebody if their permanent residence in Canada is here in this municipality, then they're entitled. They are clearly entitled to go there, and if they needed their boat from the marina would have to give it to them because they're exempt. So, and as it turns out, we have some folks who have actually transferred their permanent residence to here. They may have another place in Ontario that they live, that they have property, but this is their permanent residence. And if we barricade them, I suspect we have to make an arrangement to somehow or other let them access their property. And that is, in fact, what, if you look at the town of Parry Sound, for example, that's what they're doing. They're saying, okay, if you can show to us that this is your permanent residence, and you need to get access to you need to use the landing or whatever, then they will send somebody out and let you and let you go through. So now, of course, they have staff fairly handy that they could use to monitor this. This would, I'm guessing, would be a bit of a problem for us. We don't have extra staff that we can assign to these kind of responsibilities, and we would have to erect some barricades like gates or things that could be opened and closed, similar to what we have at the landfill site. But that is an option. So anyway, I have that concern. The other concern I have is that I do not expect the government to say, unless things really spiral out of control in a way that they don't appear to be, that the government will issue a sort of a shelter-in-place order which says basically wherever you are, you stay there and you don't go anywhere else. So they're not going to prevent folks from accessing their seasonal residences, assuming they can drive to them. So my concern is that what we do is we, by a policy of closing, of actually blocking ramps from being used, we would then be, in effect, creating two classes of citizens. We've got the class who can come with impunity to their properties if they want, and we've got folks who are prevented from coming because they're water access only. And I don't have a good idea of, across the whole municipality, how many there are like that. On some lakes there are very few. Well, Washkesh, about 40% of the population, where I am, about 40% of the population has water access only because there are no roads that go to the upper part of the lake, past Bennett. So what that means then is that you would be, if you block those completely, you're saying to a whole bunch of people, well, you can't come to your cottage, but the folks who have road access, like me, they can be there, right? So it's I guess that's a bit of a tough sell. And I even had one chap say to me, well, if you're going to prevent us from accessing our property, I assume you're going to waive the property taxes for this year because obviously we won't be using any municipal services, right? You can guess what my answer was to that. So, but I guess
hopefully your answer was, we're going to block you from coming, but you need to pay your taxes.
I said we can't contemplate.
No, I know.
We can't contemplating waiving taxes for people just because they can't use their property.
We can contemplate blocking their access. Excuse me for interrupting.
Yeah, no, you're quite right. So anyway, I want you to know I have considerable sympathy for the situation that Bennett is in. I don't I don't envy him the position that he's in, and I think he's upset because people are and it's a relatively small number of people, but there are folks, of course, who say, no darn way are you going to stop me from getting my cottage. I'm going to find some way to get my boat in, and I'm going to go there. And until the province says you can't do it, and until the province has more resources than they have now to enforce such a rule, because I don't think there's enough police in the whole of Ontario to enforce a rule like that in cottage country. So the problem is folks are going to do it, and I guess my biggest concern perhaps is that if we don't do anything, if we wait till the 24th of May weekend, which is the time that a lot of people would normally come up, by that time folks will have a lot of cabin fever and they'll be saying, you know what, I got to get out from my condo and from in front of my TV and get out some fresh air on the water, and they're going to head up here, and then we're going to have congestion at the landings, at some of the landings where there's lineups of people trying to get in and out, and maybe we won't have social distancing and that sort of thing. So Anyway, that's about all I can say. It could be possible, I guess, for us to do something like, and I'm thinking mostly of Awashkesh again, not to be selfish, but just because I suspect that maybe the area where there's the biggest potential problem, is that we could, for example, do something to close Bennett's Bay and then put some kind of a gate at the entrance to the landing at Indian Narrows and say to people, okay, this is, you need, if you need to come and inspect your property or do something like that, make an appointment or something and come through, or have some kind of control on it, as they say, like we do at the landfill site, so that it doesn't become just a regular tourist destination for people who want to fish and that sort of thing, but and restrict it to people who legitimately own property and have some reason to come there. But there again, that would be a cost that we haven't budgeted for, and we'd have to figure out how to make it work. So I don't know. I don't have. And as I say, I don't have a really good solution, and it's possible that the government will give us better tools to deal with this, but right now it's still a bit of a quandary, it seems to me. Anyway, I don't want to ramble on. Did you want to respond, Councillor McEwen?
Yeah. Could I add? Joe McEwen here. This is a very complex situation, as I appreciate it, and I'm not belittling and doubting that seasonal people who have been coming and the year-rounders here haven't been taking this really seriously. I'm just not sure we're taking it as serious as we should. We're talking people's safety and, in fact, their potential death. Like, just on our border, which is, people drive right past almost, Aurelia, Penetang, Midland, all these places in Muskoka and Simcoe, they have 202 cases, and that's just on our doorstep. They've been gradually creeping up. I know we've been keeping pretty clean on the number count, and it's totally amazing, and people have to be really totally commended for it, I believe. But the threat of bringing a case or two and letting it spread throughout our community, if we could help it, and Lord help us if it does happen. I'm not getting scared away by a boogeyman approach on this thing either, by the way. And fishermen and people who will be coming to this area, if we are one of the only designated open municipalities, you can rest assured there are going to be a lot of people who will travel exclusively. There are fishermen out there who will travel in the middle of the night to fish tomorrow and head back the next night. And I just don't like to see that. If people are coming to stay and if they live here, and especially if they're permanent residency and they can prove that and they're on lakes, then we should bend over backwards to accommodate and help these people stay here. Wawashkesh Cottage Association, from what I was informed, and this is Brennan, they're in favor of closing down the landings on Wawashkesh Lake. They're on record as having said that. So there's lots at stake here, and we don't know when we're coming out of this. May 12th is the next sort of magic date for consideration by the ministry and by the government. And Councillor Lamb even mentioned we should follow the government, provincial and federal rules as best we can, what rules they have. And if we follow Mr. Ford's request, we want to minimize travel. In fact, I have some really good statistics here. In Penetang and Muskoka right next door to us, of the sources for their infections, 51 of them are travel, 65 community acquired, and 40 close contact, and the list goes down, reaching a number of 220 contaminated individuals, and 10 of them are in hospital in serious shape. So if we think we're hiding and we're going to escape this without any kind of effect, I don't want to be on that list of saying, okay, we'll open it up to we're free for business, open for business, and that's what we're doing on the lakes, folks. If we allow this, and I fish myself. I go on Whitestone Lake and all the way from this whole area, at least 2 dozen times a year, and I will not be doing it this year. Things change big time after the emergency situation is revamped or looked at in May. Then we could be in a whole different ballgame. And if we are, thank goodness we are. If it's the other way, good luck to us. So I've closed these things down and just allow limited access where necessary. Thank you.
Well, so just so I can understand, hang on a sec, just so I can understand what your position is, Councillor McEwen, are you suggesting that we are you suggesting that we barricade landings and prevent people from using them, or are you suggesting that we simply get the word around that they're closed, and if you're, or are you suggesting that we somehow control the access so that it's not casual users and not people without a, in other words, to stop the folks who are going north until they find a place they can fish? What is it which of those things do you want us to do?
Well, Mr. Mayor, firstly, we have to publicize that we're not open for business like the other 63 locations, and many of them are right smack dab in cottage country. Scugog Lake, Halliburton, Muskoka, Treson District, East and West. We're right in the middle of it all. And if we stay open for business, I think we're just potentially setting ourselves up for some problem. Now, the logistics of doing it, I know there are privates, there are M&R, they're municipally owned. I think we have to post them where we can, and there would be one in particular, that would be Bennett's. Close that one down, and if people want to get access by whatever means, we barricade that one. And chaining doesn't necessarily say, well, if you're so inclined, I guess you're going to drag your boat underneath the chain, or you're going to do something, or you're going to go in someplace else. Policing it, I know that's a really big deal. We have to respect the goodwill and the interest of our folks to obey, and there will be 99% at least who will obey. I feel confident in that. So we have some work to do in assessing what we have to close totally by restriction and totally by posting, or separately by posting, and put the notification out so it gets put on the list of Whitestone is closed for weekend traffic.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
I take offense for weekend traffic, but anyway, having said that, there's all kinds of people that live up here all year round that have their permanent address here, but they work in the city, and they may even have a second place in the city or a second home. So I don't know how we classify them. And I just don't want to break this community away because we decide we're closed for business. And I want to clarify something. I never said that we should follow the guidance of Premier Ford. We can note the guidance. The mayor has said we can say that the mayor is, suggesting you don't come up to your cottage, but there's no law against you coming up to go to your cottage. There's no law to say close your boat launches, right? There's no law that says that. There's no law that says you can't put a boat in and go fishing. If Councillor McEwen decides not to go fishing, God love him. That's his decision. And I don't see the point of saying we're not taking it serious enough. Believe me, I as a councillor and my family are absolutely taking it seriously. And so I don't like the rep. Just hold on a second.
Let's not make
Councillor Lamb has the floor.
You get some order here.
I have the floor. Councillor McEwen, be quiet. I have the floor. I don't like your insinuations. I don't like them. They're against the seasonal people up here, whether you realize it or not.
You're totally out of line. Totally.
You're out of line by interrupting
totally out of
me.
line when you say that.
Councillor McEwen,
no
please
way.
stop
Councillor
interrupting.
McEwen, I have the floor. I have the floor. Please cease. You want to say something? Fine.
Councillor McEwen, I gave you the opportunity to speak a second time. You cannot interrupt somebody else who is speaking. I'm sorry. I will have to. I will have to start going in and muting people's lines if this is going to happen. We cannot talk over top of each other.
Okay, cut insinuation. Thank you.
I'm not trying to be.
Leaving conference.
Bruce Leahy.
Okay, I'm not trying to overspeak Councillor McEwen. All I'm trying to do is give my opinion, okay? But you can't just put things out there and expect everyone to believe them and say, oh, thank you very much, I'll gobble that up. I don't believe it's true. If you insinuated that I or anyone else wasn't taking this serious enough, then you're dead wrong in my opinion. That's all I was trying to say. I still don't think there's any sense in shutting our boat ramps down because the insinuation is we're closing them down to keep those weekend people, as you call them, from coming up here, right? Which says tons about your attitude because of 90% of the taxes that are paid up here, right? People are being responsible. I know the people that have come up. They've been the most responsible people in the world coming up. They don't go anywhere. They come up, they check their cottages, and they go home. And the Premier doesn't say you can't, and why should we? And the Premier doesn't say you can't go out in a boat or put a boat in the water. Well, why the hell should we block their access? Because we have local opinions. Keep that virus down south, right? How many people from up north go down south? When you get sick in a hospital, how many go down south? Are we going to say, don't come down south because it's our hospital? Come on, let's get real here.
Come on, you get real. You're ridiculous.
Okay, I'm going to cut this off and see. We need to provide some opportunity for the councillors, for the public to speak. So thank you, councillors. I understand your views on the matter, but let's. If we can, let's invite the public and to speak briefly, please. And if you would identify yourself before you start, just so we know, just so everybody knows who's talking.
Doug Hickey.
Doug, go ahead, please.
Yes. Okay. I generally agree with Councillor Lamb, Councillor Woods, and Mayor Comrie. At this point in time, I think if the municipality does something at this time, it's overreach. There's something that has not been raised yet, and that is the people who have summer cottages have insurance policies. And some of those insurance policies insist that their building be visited every 30, 60, or 90 days. And if you deny people either by blocking launching ramps or in effect declaring that the municipality is shut down, you have another exposure that goes on. As a person who owns property up north, I'm concerned if every cottagers not allowed or discouraged from coming up. I'm discouraged about vandalism. It will look unoccupied. It opens its doors to other things which I don't want to have happen. The other thing is I want to go up and inspect for damage of fallen trees. And so the concept
that as a cottager, we've got substantial investment in our cottage. We can't allow it, the fact that we've had a winter. We don't know what damage that could possibly be done to it. People are going to want to come up to their cottage regardless of whether they could launch their boat or not. I'm a little concerned that if the government hasn't asked us to close the boat launches, why are we taking the steps to do that? If you think about boats on the water, most of them are very well social distance. What was the difference if there is a casualty? I don't know how many casualties are on our waters in Whitestone, but the same thing occurs on the highways. If there's something happening with somebody traveling, whether it's essential or not essential, the OPP needs to step up. If we have something on the water, the same thing. We're over a month away before the long weekend comes. It seems to me that making the decision to close the boat launches right now seems to be a bit premature, and I think it would be better to see whether anything else comes up from our government over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Like I said, I think people are going to want to come up to their cottages. It's been a long winter. We've been sort of closed off from doing it, and I think most people are being very good at social distancing. Most cottages are, I know from my own, it's like, yards and yards away from your next cottage. So it's like you're not going to be on top of one another. So I just think right now that I know that there's a concern about this virus, but as the last speaker was just saying there, I mean, people are going south. People are coming north. Nobody's intentionally trying to cause the virus or bring a virus, and I think everybody is trying to be pretty respectful in this social distancing. And I know even where I live right now, it's like people are really staying that good 6 feet away and more. So I'm not and the other thing is if you've got the marinas are closed down, a lot of people have their boats at the marina. That means you can't get them out anyway. So there's a bit of a problem there already. And if you are allowing some full-time residents to put boats out in the water, but then the cottagers are saying they can't do it, I see that as a problem too, because we're paying equal taxes.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Somebody else would like to weigh in.
I don't know if I can weigh in. Can I?
Is that Lynn?
Yeah, it's Lynn. I didn't know if you were muted, whether you could actually be heard or not. So.
No, we can hear you. When you have your phone muted, which we asked you to do. I was just threatening to mute people who were talking over top of each other. But as long as we do one at a time, no, but not a problem. Go ahead.
Okay, I just have a few points in terms of the comments in terms of legal suits or whatever it was. I'm not sure how other municipalities could be closing the boat launches if they were concerned about legal issues. And the main one from us was that I know boat launches weren't listed specifically under recreation amenities, but obviously a lot of other municipalities have interpreted that recreational amenities include boat launches. And so therefore this municipality is not following that same suit that it's a recreational amenity if you do not close the boat launches like other ones. I understand Magnetawan hasn't closed, but Sundridge has, and everything else around us has closed their boat launches under that recreational amenity definition. So legally, they must feel okay about that. I guess my other point is in terms of I'm really sad that the issue becomes us against them all the time, and that it should never be us against them. What I hear from Ford is that everyone should be restricting travel, and it's seasonal, not boat access versus driving to your cottage, but it's everybody should be restricting their travel to cottage country, to cottages, is what he has said. And I guess from my point of view, the federal government and the provincial government has stated what they're hoping to do in order to get COVID under control. And the municipalities should be joining forces with the federal and provincial governments and standing the same ground.
Okay, thank you. Who else would like to speak?
I would. My name is Kevin Kitsemetry.
Oh, yes. Hi, Kevin.
Full-time resident on Whitestone Lake. I have a question. Has the council considered the costs? And I know that there's been talk about physical barricades versus chains versus signs, but what would be the cost of, first of all, setting them up, and then second of all, taking them down? As we saw today from the Ontario government, the line seems to be flattening. They're talking about plans to easing restrictions. We know this is going to come. What will be the cost to the ratepayers of Whitestone for, if we go ahead with it, to setting up barriers and taking them down?
Well, I guess the short answer is that we haven't figured out what that is. It's not an insurmountable. I wouldn't say it's an insurmountable cost.
Leaving conference.
To create.
Dan Chernish.
Oh, okay, Dan Chernish, leaving conference. All right, sorry. I just wondered who was leaving. Sorry, it isn't an insurmountable cost. What would be I think a fairly extraordinary cost would be, given the fact that we have a number of these in different places. That's why I started off by trying to tell you there's sort of 11 different ones that we would have to worry about. And of course, we'd have to take into consideration that if we close one access, if you have a lake that has multiple access points, if we close one, then we can't leave other ones open because otherwise it just causes all the traffic to go to one place, and unless we restrict it there too, So the real issue, I guess, is the labor cost of trying to enforce something at them. So if we tried to do what Parry Sound has done, for example, and I think McDougall maybe, they say, all right, if you can make a case that you need to go somewhere for whatever reason, we'll let you in. But then they would have to send the person. We don't have a lot of staff in the municipality, and we have our staff working on duties where they can maintain proper distance from each other, and so to have multiple people riding in the same truck and all these kinds of things. So sending somebody on a demand basis around the municipality to do a particular thing, that would incur some cost. And I think what we would have to ask, I'm not trying to rule this out. I'm just saying I don't know the answer, and we'd have to ask our staff to work out what the cost of that would be and tell us. And we can certainly do that, but we don't know the answer to that tonight, I guess.
No, fair enough. Thank you.
It's a good question.
It's Don Murphy. I have a question.
Go ahead, Don.
How would we handle emergency response, refugee response, fire response, medical response if we block something off? How would we manage when our EMT needs to gain access to the lake?
Well, we would have to make. I would argue that we would have to make a provision for that. I know our fire chief is on the phone, and he could
conference.
He could perhaps comment if he wants, but that would probably have some effect on what method we would use to block something off if we were going to block it off. Like if we just put huge concrete barriers up or something, then obviously they're going to have to. That's going to make it difficult for them to get a boat in the water if they need to. But if we put up a gate or something that has a lock on it, then they would be able to get through. So I'm just using that as an example.
My experience with emergency response is that seconds count, and having any restriction for Kathy and Bob to be able to get out there and provide medical assistance could be life-threatening, and I think it's something that council needs to weigh in and understand that, having to get someone to unlock a chain, move a block is something that may cause someone to die.
Somebody has a mic unmuted on your phone. You're picking up background noise. Could you please check your phone and mute it if you're not the person talking? I still hear phones unmuted. Okay, so thank you for your comment, Dom. Is there somebody else who would like to speak, please? And if you're not speaking, again, please mute your phone so we don't pick up background noise.
Hey, it's Chris Tubbs here.
I'm sorry. Who was it that was speaking?
Sorry, I lost speaking. Chris Tubbs' name?
I was speaking, it's Dom, and I'm asking about emergency response and time to get emergency equipment into the lake when there is a physical barrier.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, Dom. I did hear your comment, and I guess I thought you were finished, and there was a bit of background noise there, but
leaving conference.
I was going to give our fire chief an opportunity, if he wishes to say something, to respond to you. If not, Bob, do you have a comment?
Sure, yeah. Whatever council decides to do, it has to be so we can get in there fast and easy. Putting up a lock, somebody can put something in that and delay us from getting into the boat. So basically the only thing you're going to be able to do is put up some kind of pylons or something, if that's your point. But yeah, we have to be able to get in there fast and quick and with no delay.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Does that deal with your question, Dom?
Well, it kind of leads us to what sort of blockade will we do. I totally understand Bob's response. It's important that we have access, but if you put a pylon up,
joining conference,
I can imagine that people will just move the pylon, put their boat in, so it doesn't really create any sort of restriction. But I wholeheartedly agree that Bob and Kathy and our EMT responders need to have unrestricted access. If I'm on an island or in a cottage and I need someone to come and give me medical help, I don't want them to have to phone someone to find a key to unlock a chain.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I think that's. If we decide to do something this evening that does provides a restriction, then obviously we would have to take those things into consideration and find a way so that we don't make life more difficult for first responders. You're quite right.
We need to involve Bob, Kathy, and our first responders as probably the most critical people that decide how we blockade our boat ramp. And if I can't put my boat in, it's not the end of the world. I'm okay with that. I have a canoe and a kayak, and I'm okay. But if I can't get medical assistance because I live on an island, that's a huge issue. And I think council needs to understand that it's not okay to physically block emergency response to our lake.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. We hear your point. Point taken. Is there someone else who wishes to speak?
Mr. Mayor, it's Chris Tufts here.
I'm sorry, I can't. There is still someone whose cell phone is not muted. Would you please look at your cell phone? If that mute light is not on, press it and mute it unless you are the person who is trying to speak, because I can hear people talking over top of each other.
I might have gotten feedback. Can you hear me now, Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Can I ask who's speaking, please?
Yeah, sorry about that. It's Chris Tufts is the name.
Okay, I didn't hear you come on, but okay, go ahead, Chris.
Sorry about that. Just the question is regarding the transmission or the concern of transmission. Wawashkish has come up a couple of times here, and there'd been a couple of comments as far as the cottages being separate or distance apart and whatnot. And I think typically for most residents of the lake, they're doing their shopping, they're doing everything they need, everything they're picking up is going to be at a distance. They usually show up, jump in their boat, and off they go. And there's no crossover or interaction with locals generally. So aside from that unlikely event that there's a need for first responders to show up, there really shouldn't be any situation if somebody were to show up, stay on the lake for a week and leave. There really should be no interaction and no opportunity for any kind of transmission of the virus anyway. And there's nothing in the municipality that anybody would be crossing over or needing necessarily. So the opportunity or the chance of any kind of transmission should be significantly low, if not null, altogether.
Thank you.
Yes, I hear your argument for sure. I think it's somebody said earlier that being out, being at one's cottage or being on the water in and of itself probably doesn't increase the risk. The only things that increase the risk is if folks are getting together, if folks are having to go to the same place to buy whatever it is they're buying or to get supplies or get that sort of thing, then obviously there is, and as the season ramps up, unless the government prevents people from traveling at all, then you're going to see, for example, shopping at Sobeys in Parry Sound, you're going to see, or going to the Shoppers Drug Mart or whatever it is, wherever you need to go to get something, you're going to see more people, and the physical distancing will result in them having the requirement, which I believe is going to continue, by the way, is going to require them to limit the number of people in the store, and you'll see lineups and that kind of thing, I guess. But that is already happening in other jurisdictions, I suppose, and people are living with it. So, and anyway, that's it's. I think the argument that you're making is an argument that people will use to say, look, I'm going to come and I'm not going to. If they can, they're going to say, I'll come and I'll make sure that I don't come into contact with anybody else and pick this thing up, and I don't give it to anybody else, hopefully that's what that's what will happen for those who do decide to come.
And Mr. Mayor, if I might say, I think that your statement is right spot on. And if anyone thinks that people are not going to come up when it's only guidance, I think people are dreaming in Technicolor. There are some that won't, but I think that most or a lot will, right? But it doesn't mean because they come up that they're irresponsible in terms of the provincial laws, right, or edicts or finable things, right? They're going to respect all those things. So that's the point I want to make.
All right. So again, I want to.
Doug Hickey, could I make an additional comment?
Well, please be brief because you've spoken already, Doug.
Okay, I'll be quick. The issue is opening or closing launching ramps. It's not shutting down Whitestone. So let's stay focused on the issue. And secondly, although it's been said it's not an us versus them, I can tell you to cottagers, it certainly feels like it, because shutting down the launching ramp certainly feels like, let's stop all those party goers that are coming to the cottage. Let's prevent that. That's not the kind of people who own cottages. So let's stay focused on launching ramps.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to wrap this up and sort of get to the chase and see if we can agree on some actions here. But I'm just gonna take one more chance. Someone who has not already spoken, who's on the phone and wishes to speak.
Dean Turner.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Dean. Yeah.
Yes, I'll keep it quick. I'd just like to say I think that Councillor Lamb and Mr. Hickey earlier have kind of organized most of what I would have understood. I have a question for you, and it's just a straight-up question. I'm a little bit confused. I keep hearing you say that you don't have the right to barricade or to block the boat launches because the MNR has that, yet you're still discussing doing just that. It kind of confuses me, so I just put it there. I would also just add that I think you have it right with your signage to enforce social distancing and 5 people or less, and use at your own risk. And I will leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, just let me respond very quickly to your question. The question was, why are we talking about barricading if we can't do it? I reached out to the MNR and asked them, because my understanding was that it wasn't within our purview to close launches that are on Crown land. And by the way, they confirmed that is the case. So as of this moment in time, based on the information that I have, we don't have the legal authority. And but I always thought that was strange. We had some. In fact, the CAO and I had participated in a delegation with the Minister of Natural Resources back in February, and one of the things that we raised with them was the fact that the province had sort of downloaded to us, to the municipality, responsibility for a number of Crown land areas and boat launches in particular, and the problem we raised with them was the fact that we couldn't, in fact, enforce our own bylaws and regulate people's behavior on that Crown land. Only the MNR could do it, and the MNR doesn't have the resources to do it. And they said, oh yeah, that shouldn't be the way it is. We should fix that. And so I reached out to them when this situation came up and said, okay, you said you were going to fix it. What are you doing? And they said, well, we're looking for a way, and the last word I had from them was at 5 o'clock today. They said, we're looking for a way that you could do this if you want to, and but we don't have it yet. So maybe they won't come up with it. Maybe they will ask. Maybe they will convince the government to clarify what the intent is of these restrictions in the first place, or maybe they will provide us with a mechanism. And so I'm leaving that open for discussion, because if it is the will of the council to close at least some of them, then, and when I say close them, I mean make them really closed to all except urgent requirements or legitimate requirements to use them, then there's a possibility that we will be given the authority to do that, and if we have the authority to do it, then we can't. If we're not given the authority to do it, then I don't know what we would have to get legal advice as to what the consequence is of going ahead and closing them on our own without the authority, and what would happen then if somebody decides they're not going to accept that and they're going to demolish our barricades or whatever. So, I think we're leaving it open to the possibility that we may be able to get around this current problem. That's why we're discussing it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else? Sorry, go ahead. Anybody else?
I think we should move it along, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Thank you to everybody who's weighed in. So, I'm looking at. Sorry, I'm trying to get my. I'm trying to find a page of resolutions here that I had, which. Anyway, I don't see them. So we've kind of got a blank slate here, and obviously, one option I think is that we could do is to the first option that we could do is in effect to leave the matter in abeyance, which that's the do nothing option that kind of almost exists. In other words, we leave things the way we are at the moment.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make that motion.
All right. You can. I guess you can make that motion. Yeah, go ahead.
Good. I'd like to make the motion.
Thank you. And
I'd like to make the motion that what we've done so far, which is say social distancing, and please respect the rules and use it at your own risk, is as far as we go for now. To be revisited in the future, which is the next council meeting or whatever, depending on the situation. So my motion is that we obviously leave it the way it is, that we don't close boat ramps or launches, and I would look for a seconder of that.
Okay. Is there a seconder for Councillor Lamb's motion? Okay, I do not hear a seconder, so I gather that there is someone who would like to do something. Let me just go down a list of possible things, and you can think about this. Sort of the next level would be to advise folks that they're closed and the reasons for them being closed, but not take steps to physically prevent people from using them. So that is and I think we can do that with impunity, because we can say, as far as we're concerned, they're closed, but we haven't blocked anybody. And I guess the third, so that's just kind of a next level of, it focuses really on communication, on focusing on trying to convince people that this is not the time for them to come. And by the way, there's lots of good reasons. Some of the water level is still high in a couple of little lakes and so on, and so there's all kinds of good arguments for delaying coming. But anyway, the next level after that is that we restrict some boat launches in a mechanism that using a mechanism that doesn't prevent first responders and doesn't prevent folks who have a legitimate requirement to be there or can demonstrate that they have, but prevents folks from just kind of showing up and dropping boats in at will. And that's I guess that's maybe as I'm not sure that isn't as far as we could go if somebody wanted. So I guess I'm looking for someone to make a motion to see kind of how far we want to move, and if we don't want to do nothing, what is it that we want to do?
Yes, Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
If I could make a motion, I think I would be comfortable with us saying that the ramps and the boat launches are closed, but not physically barricading them at this time, so that people such as our first responders and people that feel that they have a legitimate need to reach their cottages can still reach them. But I think the message would be that we are not in a normal situation right now, and I think it is advisable that you not travel in this time. So however you want to clean that up.
Well, okay, I'm sort of trying to make some shorthand here, but basically I'm what I would interpret your message, your motion to be that we message that the boat launches and access points are closed, and with reasons, but that we don't physically obstruct people from using them. Have I captured that correctly?
Yes.
Is there a seconder for that motion?
Joe McEwen, I'd be interested in your response.
Okay, I'm going to ask again. Is there anybody who wants to second? I don't hear a seconder.
Mr. Mayor, if I might pipe in, sorry to interrupt. I know you're looking for motions to, have closure to this thing, right? But if people, the third option is close them down and barricade them, which I think is the worst option of all, right? So if someone wants to make that motion and get it seconded, fine. I take you back to, first of all, if we're going to, and I appreciate Beth's opinion, or Councillor Gorham Matthews' opinion. I know where she's coming from, and I respect it very much. But to close them with a sign isn't going to accomplish anything. People are going to pull their boats up on a Saturday or Sunday or Friday night, and they're going to maybe look at the sign or not look at the sign, and they're going to put their boats in, right? And so I don't know what it's going to really accomplish, right? So it's sort of like a false thing, right? If we decide we're going to close them, then close them and barricade them, which I think is the worst decision we should make, okay? So we either go back to say, we are a balanced community. We're not like Magnetawant. We're not going to put our docks in to encourage people to go down rails and touch, and the next person goes down and touches and, carries the virus and all that kind of stuff. We're not going to put our docks in, but you know what? A boat launch is a boat launch. You're going to drive up. You're not going to contaminate the next person. There aren't people congregating 10 at a time at a boat launch to gab, or they could go to the liquor store or to the landfill site or anywhere else and do that. Just like they're not going to congregate. They're going to put their boat in. They're going to slip away and go to their cottage or their home or their permanent home, and they're going to take their trailer out and go home. So I don't know what all this is about. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, right? So you know, you either go full bore and get rid of them and say, you know, when they're all closed for local, seasonal, everybody, it's all closed, or you leave it the way it is. And I think we're balanced, and quite frankly, I think we're right. Okay? So that's my 2 cents worth.
Mr. Mayor, now.
Yeah, I wondered if you were still there, Councillor McEwen.
I lost connection. I had to get back. Sorry, I was listening, but I couldn't get on.
Okay. Sorry about that. Do you have a motion that you would like to make?
I would second Councillor Gorham's request motion. And I'd like the messages both actually closed to non-essential traffic, and that we do provide ready access by whatever means for rescue people. And by essential traffic, that would be people who live on an island or on a lake, or they need the lake access to get to their business or their home. And the other thing, a couple other things I'd like to include here too, if possible. I think it's important that we get the word out to the media, like the anglers and hunters and those people who are advertising that 63 places or complete municipalities and provinces are closed down. There are people out there who are going to be looking for places to come, and you know, Lord help us if we bring somebody in or let somebody come in who is not a resident. And I don't have any problem with people coming up if they'll come up and stay here, or if they come up and check their cottage or whatever they have to do, just as a quick in and out. Hopefully they're not bringing a bug from someplace along the way.
For the love of God.
Pardon me?
No other comment. Mute your phone, Councillor Lamb, please. Please. Thank you.
And
go ahead, Councillor McEwen.
The last little thing I'd like to see is that we revisit it when the emergency restrictions are lifted by the province, May the 12th, or our nearest council meeting to that. After that, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I think the revisit thing is almost a standard part of anything that we would do here. You know, with any of these matters that we raise, because the situation may change and we may need to revisit it. But so just so I can understand, you are basically seconding Councillor Gorham Matthews' motion, which was to message that they are closed to non-essential traffic but that we not obstruct it, so that we not obstruct them, so that we're not preventing people from coming. Once again, have I got that, mover and seconder? Have I got that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Is there any is there any other? Councillor Woods, we haven't heard from you. Is there anybody, do you wish to comment on that one? Or?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we have it now, the signs are posted at all of them for everyone to practice the social distancing. I can see that, and I can see us not putting our docks in. But couldn't we restrict it? I mean, if we try and say no to everybody and we block it off, and it does leave us in a legal battle down the road, could we not just restrict it to people that aren't taxpayers of the municipality? And because if you say essential travel, I don't know who it was, but someone brought up that everyone's version of essential is different. And I mean, one thing that I could come up with there, if someone's down in the city and they're stressed out about what's going on with their property because they haven't seen it since last fall, and they're to maintain their mental health, they need to come and take a look at it. It is a valid argument. So, I mean, restricting it to outside people so that we're not going to get a massive influx, fishermen coming from, 3, 4, 5 hours away because Whitestone launches are all open. If we closed it down to everybody other than ratepayers, but not blockade it and not put the docks in, I think that would be, to me, a more feasible approach.
Well, okay. I mean, they're not bad suggestions as far as I can see. So I'm just extending this line out a little bit. They're closed to non-essential travel by ratepayers.
By non-ratepayers.
Yeah. I was going to say that. Yeah, it's really non-ratepayers. I'm trying to find the right way to word this, but yeah, you're right. So the idea being that it's non-ratepayers it would be very clear that non-ratepayers are excluded. Essential travel for ratepayers only, and the other thing I heard was the no docks, right? And so we're leaving the docks where they.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, I can support that. I think Councillor Woods has said it very, very well. We don't need to put docks out to invite, boats, to go up and down rails, pass viruses and whatever. And I think this is all going to become sort of, a moot point 6 weeks from now, but hopefully sooner than that, and hopefully not later than that. But I can support exactly what he says. So, I don't want people, flocking to Whitestone because we're open. But I also I want to protect the property rights of people in Whitestone. So I support what he said 100%. 100%. Like what he said was right. And I thank you, Brian, for saying that. And I think that's a compromise for everyone. But to shut the rest of them down and say, anything else is improper. So I support what Councillor Wood says. So whatever the language is, I think we can all agree on that.
So let me just go back to the mover and seconder, if I may. Are you okay with that, with those sentiments?
Mr. Mayor, go ahead, Beth.
Well, I was just going to say I don't think it's much different than what we'd said before, that everyone has their own definition of what they consider essential, and if someone needs to access their property, that's why I said we don't block them off physically, but we ask people to be reminded that it is not business as usual here.
Yeah, and that's the part of the messaging that I agree that we have to beef this up, and we did in fact have a messaging piece planned that was going to be a little bit more, a little bit more detailed along the lines of some others that you've seen, not the, a balance between not being excessively aggressive, but making it very clear that there's a lot of good reasons why you shouldn't be just deciding it's a nice day, let's go up and get on the lake. So, Councillor McEwen, did you have a?
Well,
you're okay.
I think by doing this, we're negating the whole issue of closing the thing down. Period. If you're allowing all ratepayers basically to use it, the message I'd like to see is that it's closed to just not essential. I don't know how you define that. Everybody's got their own definition. But I'd like the word out there that Whitestone, amongst provincial municipalities, is not open for boat traffic. Therefore, I'd like to see them closed. And if they're closed in such a way that if people need the essential travel past them for whatever reasons, I guess so be it. But to say we're going to leave it open for all ratepayers, we don't know who's a ratepayer, who's not, who's a builder, who's a contractor, otherwise. And we're not a police state. We don't have any way of policing anything. So
as long Mayor Comrie, as long as we can block the people who have seasonal residences from coming up, then that's okay, right?
But yeah, but we're talking about messaging here. We said we were not going to.
I was trying to come up with a solution that would pass through everything and get it okay. It's obvious to me. Excuse me, I know Councillor McEwen's going to pipe in, and I don't want him to. It's obvious to me.
Only one person can talk at a time, please.
Excuse me, I have the floor. I just respectfully ask that I have the floor.
You do have the floor, that's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. And I'd ask that I don't get 30 seconds in and then get piping in from Councillor McEwen. Well, all I'm saying is that's a compromise, right? If you have a cottage up here, we're saying you have the right to come to your cottage. You can claim essential services or whatever. If we want to stop people from Lake Shugog from coming up here because we're open for business, as Councillor Woods has suggested, I'm all for that. We don't want people to flock up here, except you're hurting the businesses up here who do flock. But anyway, having said that, we just need to, I'm all for that, right? But do not block, and intentionally or unintentionally, people who are 90% of our tax base saying we don't want you up here. I don't want that. I won't support it. And you know what? I don't think Beth is really trying to say that, or I don't think Brian Woods is trying to say that. We're trying to come up with a solution. That's all I'm trying to say. So say, okay, if you're not a ratepayer here, we're going to try to restrict you on the lake. The problem with that is how do we administer that, right? I don't know how the hell you do that, right? But having said that, that's more in line with what the messaging should be, not close it down. You're not welcome. We're in a serious situation. We don't want the medical people coming up and you bringing the viruses and all that crap. That's unnecessary up here. So I'm done.
Okay, all right, thank you. I really would like to get us, past if we can agree on a step, and I want to suggest one more thing to you, and then but let's do this. Let's test this one, if you will. I'm just going to ask, and again, the motion as I have it is that we message, I'm using that as a verb, that we message that our public landings are closed to non-ratepayers and for non-essential travel, whatever that means, and that we not, will that we will not put out our docks, but we will not physically block we will not take steps to physically block them. That's what I heard the message. That's what I heard the motion.
I think that's a fair compromise.
So that has been moved and seconded. I'm going to call the question and go down this motion A, if you will, and I'll just.
Mr. Mayor, could I just make one last little comment? Since,
leaving conference.
Make changes.
Ben Jevons?
Yeah, I could go with that.
Go ahead.
Excuse me?
Go ahead.
Are we open?
Yes.
Yeah,
somebody just left.
I can go with this as an exceptional situation. I'm not 100% in favor of it. I don't think we're totally looking at the seriousness of our situation, but and pretty soon we'll be 100% tax paid by seasonal. We're up to 90 now. Anyway, I'll go with it. Thank you.
All right. So you're going to vote in favor. I'll put that down. Councillor Gorham Matthews, are you in favor?
Yes.
Councillor Lamb?
Yes.
In favor. Councillor Woods?
Yes.
Thank you. And I can support that. So that motion is carried. Now, and I thank you for all the discussion. Believe me, I know this is difficult, but I want to suggest one other thing to you, if I may, and it's simply this, and it's a Wawashkish specific thing. So I'm not talking about any other boat launch, but the two that we have here, because they're very close together and because they're accessed via the property that is immediately adjacent to where Bennett's are, I would like to have your authority, I guess, to investigate if there is a mechanism that we could put in place to close the one at Bennett's, physically. I'm talking about physically closing the one at Bennett's Bay and diverting the traffic on Wawashkish to the Indian Narrows. And we wouldn't be putting the docks in or anything of that sort, but to try to get and that would allow for some what I would call Wawashkish specific messaging, which I would hope that we would get the assistance of the Cottagers Association on Wawashkish to do this, to try to see if we can have the use of that landing by cottagers, since we're basically saying it's not for the general public, have cottagers respect that and not get too bunched up. And I'm thinking ahead to, say, the May 24 weekend, when I think, based on previous years' experience, we often get a lot of people who are trying to get in and out of there, and it makes it it makes it a bit difficult. Difficult to keep the physical distancing I'm concerned about and that sort of thing. So I don't have a specific solution for you, but I would like your agreement to, if possible, to investigate whether we could do that as a means of trying to provide some support for the situation that the Bennetts are in.
You have my support, Mr. Mayor. Do you need a resolution?
Well, I think I'd like to test it and make sure. And I know somebody will say, "Well, we're going beyond," but I'm wondering what the mood of the council is for us to, and it would still we would see what we can work out and come back. And it may not be possible to do. That's why I want to. I don't want to make it as a firm resolution, but what I would really like is a motion to authorize the mayor and CAO to investigate the possibility of doing this, and then we would get back to council. And so, if I could get a motion to that.
Well, I don't know whether it's a motion. I'm supportive of that.
So this motion B is so I'm going to say to authorize mayor and CAO to investigate, I'll say, the feasibility of closing. I better say physically closing, because that's what we're talking about, physically closing Bennett's Bay boat launch. A boat launch and diverting traffic to Indian Narrows. So, was Councillor McEwen, were you moving that?
Yes, I would so move that. Do we want to include ratepayers traffic, since we have that in the other motion, or?
Yeah, this would be subject to the previous motion that we just passed. I mean, so yes, if we're only talking about ratepayers, we're not talking about making it open to the to the general public?
I move.
Is there a seconder?
I can second that.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Woods.
Was that okay, Councillor Woods? All right. Depends here. Once again, I'm going to go down the list for this is A, for B. Councillor Gorham Matthews, are you in support of that?
Yes.
Councillor Lamb?
Yes.
Councillor McEwen?
Yes.
Councillor Woods?
Yes.
And I am too. So thank you. That I think that got us through that part. And again, I do appreciate your forbearance with all of this. I know it's not an easy subject. So let us go very. Hopefully, it won't take so long. Let us go on to 11.2 if we can. Councillor Gorham Matthews raised the question of the walking trails. Once again, the province has sort of given has given kind of mixed messages on this. Crown land is open for people. Is open for people to walk on.
Leaving conference.
Chris Tubbs.
Sorry, there's just people leaving the conference. Walking trails that are on Crown land, which ours are. The government has basically, their position is you can walk on walking trails. But once again, I guess there is a question as to whether we want to put some signage on them or some kind of messaging on them. There isn't at the present time anything. At least I was out at Nesbitt on the weekend. There wasn't anything there. I don't even know. I'm sure Councillor Gorham Matthews or Councillor McEwen, you could comment, but I'm taking it that you haven't been out there trying to get them ready or anything yet. So, what do you? Does somebody wish to suggest an action that we take with respect to those?
Councillor Lamb, I would suggest we put the same signs as we do at boat launches saying, please be careful, social distance, don't close them, but, and most people on walking paths, our walking paths aren't tremendously used, and B, I don't think, if people want to meet on the path and talk, I think they're pretty smart. They can meet at the end of the path or at the beginning of the path. Let's not take the exercise ability out of people. So put up a sign like we have at the boat launches, saying, be careful, use at your own risk, and please, social distance, right? You want to close them, I guess you're going to only close them to a few people because that's all that use them. Thank you.
So is that your motion?
Well, I'll make a motion similar to that,
all right.
But I want to hear from Councillor Gorham Matthews. I don't think we should close them. I think that if we're going to keep boat launches open to people, I don't think we should close our walking paths, but or trails. So anyway.
So Councillor Gorham Matthews, I should let you start because you raised this issue in the beginning. But what's your view?
I just wasn't sure if they fell under the umbrella that they're talking about recreational spaces, of whether or not we were supposed to have them closed. Because 2 weeks ago when this came up, we weren't sure if boat launches and if recreational, like walking trails, were included. So I just want to make sure that we hadn't missed something that we were supposed to have closed. My only comment would be that we haven't been on the trails yet, and I just wasn't sure how the committee was to approach the maintenance of the trails in the spring. If we did it all separately, or what your direction would be on that.
Well, I guess that's a good question. As a practical matter, Well, I was going to say they may be closed because there may be trees dropped down across them and things that we don't know about. But I don't know. I mean, the options again that we have are say nothing about them for the time being. We are not required to close them. I checked very carefully through the fine print, and there's this exception that if you actually look at the reg that was passed, the exception says it's okay to walk on the it's okay to walk on the Crown land. You just can't access it through a park. But you can. There is no prohibition. The last sentence of the reg says something like, "For greater certainty, I had it on my screen earlier today. There's a greater certainty.
Conference.
There is nothing here to prevent people from actually using the Crown land, unless it has, like, if it had swings and slides and stuff like that on it, you couldn't use it. But the so-called amenities. But it doesn't have amenities. If it's just plain ordinary Crown land, you can go on it. You can't camp on it, but you can go on it. You can walk on it. And they specifically, I think, we're trying not to stop people from sort of exercising them. So anyway, we don't have to do anything. It's just I think if you would like it to be signed, or if you want to convey, it's more a question of messaging. What do you want to say to people? Do you want to say, sorry, they're not ready, don't use them, or do you want to say, let's you just
leaving
as Councillor Lamb suggested, use it at your own risk.
If we're not obligated to do anything with them, I would say just leave it and not have that expense of having to put the signs up. I don't think they're overly used, and I think in most cases there's generally a tree or two down at any time, so people will just go around it.
Yeah.
And I suppose I can, Councillor McHugh and I can connect and figure out a way in which we can get out and safely look over the trail still.
Yeah, don't connect. Just
not physically connect.
I know. I'm just kidding. All right. Well, if does anybody else want to weigh in on this? Are you content to just leave it for now and we'll bring it back up?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
I'm okay with that. Sorry.
I'd be okay with that. I think we just leave it, and Councillor Gorman and I can be in touch with each other and determine who can go where. If I get an opportunity to get someone with a license and chainsaw, I'll have them buzz around the Waystone Lake Trail. But I'll be in touch with you, Beth.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. I'm gonna try and rush ahead if I can to the last one of these 11.1 pieces, which has to do with cottage rentals. And I would like to start by having the CAO clerk tell us what action we have already taken with respect to cottage rentals. Because they were covered in part in the provincial regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there is a section that speaks specifically to short-term rentals. We have sent letters to all of the folks that have licenses with the municipality for short-term rental and simply advise them of the legislation. And basically, it says every person who provides short-term rentals and rental accommodations shall ensure that any rentals booked after April 4th are only provided to individuals who are in need of housing during the emergency period. It doesn't deal with any bookings that came before April 4th, and we would not necessarily know what came before and after, but we did send letters to the folks that have licenses with the municipality. There are other people that rent through Airbnb, and we haven't reached out to those because we actually really don't know who they are. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. That's what we've done today on that issue.
All right. So I guess the question is, we do have folks who routinely rent their properties, and some of them I know have rental permits, and they will have received a notice from us, but others will not have. And I guess, you know, that kind of casual use of property would not fall under, if you go back to the conversation we had a few minutes ago, that mind you, though these properties, maybe many of them are not water access and are not affected by their, you know, are not affected by what we just talked about, but they could certainly constitute what would amount to casual use by people who have the same vested interest in the community, perhaps. Do we want to take any other action, either in terms of messaging or in terms of trying to enforce our bylaw, which requires people to have permits, and say, fine, you know, get a message out to people saying, you can't rent your place except under this particular circumstance, and if we find out that you are, you'll be charged or something, you know. I'm just suggesting, is there does anybody feel we should sort of raise the bar on this one?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Excuse me, Councillor Lamb. I do.
Yeah.
I think we've done the right thing. I brought this up to our CAO last week, and I think we've done the right thing by you know, writing to the 10 or 12 or 15 people in our community that have licenses, and I think that's the proper thing to do. The reality is, as we all know, that there are literally dozens, if not hundreds, of other people that rent their cottages out. And not tonight is the debate about the bylaw or anything like that. It's got loopholes in it like you wouldn't believe. But having said that, there are still people on Airbnb, and Airbnb, as I understand it, and I may be wrong, and the province has banned cottage rentals till, I thought it was the end of June, but I might be wrong. That might be June 1st, but I think it's the end of June. So the way our bylaw system works, of course, it's by complaint. And so our bylaw officer, Paul Rossiter, is going to wait until someone calls in and says, hey, you know, Johnny next door is renting his place and there's 13 people up there, and then he's going to react probably the end of the weekend. And there's a whole bunch of complications to that. Are you renting? I am. You know, I booked it before April the 4th. So this is all, you know, the province could have made it real easy by saying you're not allowed to have anyone in your rental place, particularly if there's more than 5 people, till at least July the 1st, right? And they would have made it easy. Instead, they've left it so that we all have to kind of half-baked kind of administer this thing, right? I would suggest the only action other than what we've done is that we ask the CAO to ask the bylaw officer to please go on and Google Airbnb and see all the cottages on Whitestone Lake, and please send them a notice that we're watching this and that you shouldn't be renting your place until whatever it is, July the 1st, and just advise them of that and say, if you do, you're going to be held responsible for, I guess, to the province. I'm not sure. I guess they're in violation of our bylaw, but having said that, it might be an unenforceable bylaw, but at least go to the people on Airbnb, right? And then the rest, we can only rely on people calling in. We can't send the bylaw officer out on a search and chase every weekend to see who's there and who's not, and bing, bang, boom, right? So, but I do think, I'm really concerned that there are people that don't get it, that are going to come up and just, you know, the almighty dollar is going to command everything. So they don't give a hoot. They go through a rental agency and they rent their place, and they say there's only 5, and all of a sudden there's 13. So that's a real concern to me over the next month or two. So having said that, that's the only action I can think of, and maybe there's more, but thank you.
Mayor Comrie, it's Lynn Brennan. Can I speak to this?
Yes, I guess. Sure.
I rent out through Airbnb. I have my permit through the municipality.
Leaving conference.
I have not received the letter, although I've got my permit. I have received from Airbnb a notice that there's a provincial order that I cannot rent short-term. So Airbnb and the province have clearly stated that it's an order, provincial order, not to rent short-term. Doesn't matter if it's 5 people or more. It's not at all.
Well, did you have it rented prior to April?
I've closed it. I've put my calendar. It still shows on Airbnb, but if you go in, my calendar is closed, so you can't book.
Oh, okay.
I do have people renting in May that booked previously before it was closed, but have informed them that there's a provincial order, and if it's not lifted by then, they cannot rent.
Okay. Well, that's interesting information. I don't know. Thank you for providing it. I'm not sure. I don't know if the CAO Kirk has any response to that. I take it you were reading what the reg actually said, were you?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I was reading what the reg said, specifically about short-term rentals. It sounds like Airbnb has taken a harder stand on the issue.
Well, I thought I read the regulation from the province which said no short-term rentals.
It says
You're right,
no short-term rentals shall ensure that any rentals booked after April 4th are only provided to individuals in need of housing during the emergency period.
Right.
The key, Mr. Mayor, is that people can claim, and Kath and I, quite frankly, used to rent 15 years ago, right? And if we rented 6 weeks, which we probably did when we first owned the cottage, they were all booked on January the 1st, right? Like we were just sending out to people after that, book, right? They were all done in January, not by April. If by April the 4th you're still trying to rent your cottage, quite frankly, it's probably not worth renting, and I mean that tongue-in-cheek. But, it's just not. So, yeah. And we're not in this case, but most of our rentals were July and August, right? There weren't a lot of people wanting to do it in April or May. But the out for people always is to say, oh, it was booked in January, right? So I'm up here. And that's a loophole, right? And again, I blame the province because they could have just said, it doesn't matter whether it's April the 4th or not. Like, if you they're done. As Lynn says, she's taken the responsible step to say, I'm sorry that you booked it before, but you're not going to rent. But people aren't going to do that. So there's an out, even if our bylaw officer visits, the renter who's for the almighty dollar just says, if they ask you, tell them we booked it in January, right? And so it makes everything null and void. And that's the sad part of all this, right? And so, that's the reality.
We have an island here, Lynn knows the one I'm talking about, Doris Island, that is rented by some people, the people who own it. They rent it out virtually all summer. And if you go and look, and they have a permit from the municipality, but if you go and look at their website, the whole thing has been rented through from June to September since last year, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a very expensive place, and it's
Joining conference.
It holds a large number of people, and so I'm not really sure quite what would happen. Now, the thing that occurs to me is that a lot of the renters come from the States, and as matters now stand, they wouldn't be able to get here to get to it, but maybe that'll change in June or July. I don't know. So it's but anyway, I guess the question really is there anything? What is it that we want to
Leading
do,
conference.
if anything, other than what we're doing? I mean, it's not a. I don't think it's what I describe as a happy situation. But as Councillor Lamb pointed out earlier, we're not going to fix the sort of underlying flaws that prevent the irresponsible renting, probably. So. It's I think it's more a question of messaging. What do we want? Do we want to say anything other than recite what the CAO already read to us?
Mr. Mayor, could I make a comment?
You may.
Yeah, I would think if they're exercising a rental situation, they're having more than 5 people there, and it becomes noticeable and obvious, then it would be up to the neighbors or whoever sees it to maybe report them. If not, then I can't say it's going around looking for them. There are municipalities, and Saugeen is one in particular, and there's another one over by Bancroft. They've hired enforcement personnel to specifically go out and make sure cottages are not being rented short term, effective like April 4th here.
No.
I just found that. So if we just proceed along basically as we are on a complaint basis, I guess, I don't know what else we could do. And if we get a complaint, I guess Mr. Ross.
Leaving conference.
Tom Murphy.
Joining conference.
Okay, so maybe I can
Leaving
ask.
conference.
Maybe I can ask the clerk. Did we remind people that there's a limit on how many people can be there or not? Unless they're all part of one family?
No. The letter came from our planning assistant who administers the program, and I didn't read that. She just simply cited the
Leaving conference.
the legislation and
Guess so, then.
suggested people.
Okay. Well, folks, I'm a little concerned about the passage of time here. We need to move on, and unless I hear a motion for a specific action, I think we should probably leave this.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I would suggest, and it's not a motion as much as a staff direction, is that maybe we ask the CAO to call the bylaw officer and say, please Google Airbnb. All you need to do is go into Airbnb and hit Whitestone or Whitestone Lake or Whitestone, and you'll see all the properties come up. So it could be 10 or 12 or 20, and maybe contact them through email or whatever and say, here's I'm the bylaw officer or whatever. Here's the provincial law, and we expect you to abide by it. And if you don't abide by it, it will be enforced, right? Or something to that effect, right? Which puts a little bit of onus on them as renters to at least, or as owners to at least say, okay, we've kind of sort of notified you as best we can, right? And we don't have to point out before April 4th or after April 4th, but we at least notify them so they're all on equal footing, and they don't come back to us and say, well, you never told me, like I didn't know or whatever. So maybe I think that's a pretty simple thing for the bylaw officer to do with an hour or two of his time with a standard message to just send out to everyone, right, on Airbnb. And I don't think that's taken a lot of time or effort or money, but at least we're protecting ourselves to, again, as I said, enforce the provincial laws or regulations. Not advice, but provincial laws, which this is.
Mr. Mayor,
okay, so
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I think that message is already out there. If you Google Airbnb, they're putting their own message out to their own people. So anyone who is paying fees and connected with Airbnb, they're over the top notified that these rules are in place. It's the other people I'd be concerned about, the non-Airbnb, the short-term rentals. So I don't see getting staff or anybody too involved in trying to contact people. I think they're already notified.
okay, well, I'll ask the CAO clerk. Do you have any? Do you think this is something we should follow up on, or?
What I can say, I'm not personally familiar with the Airbnb site. It's not a service that I use, but we'll have a look and we'll see what we can do and see if it's relatively easily done. I assume, as Councillor Lamb said, you type in your location, whether it's municipality of Whitestone or Whitestone Lake or whatever the options are. We'll see what comes up and we'll see if these folks, I don't know if they, Lynn Brennan would probably know. She knows the site. I don't know if the address actually comes up or how that's done, but we'll look into it. We'll see what we can do to get a message out if it isn't already on the site. How's that?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to now ask for a motion to reconvene to regular session at sorry, I'm writing down here.
Meeting conference.
So we're going to go out of committee of the whole at
This is Doug Dickey. Can I just make one compliment?
I guess so, if it's quick, Doug, yes.
It is. I would like to compliment Councillor Wood for his injection of the word ratepayer. That is a wonderful injection into everything we talked about, and that helps a lot. So thank you, Councillor Wood.
Okay, thank you for commending Councillor Wood. Can I get a mover and seconder to move out of committee of the whole and back into regular session, please?
Leaving conference.
I'll make the motion.
I think I heard Councillor McEwen first, did I?
Perfect.
Sure.
And Councillor Lamb seconded.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I'm assuming nobody's going to, unless you speak right now, I'm assuming you're in favor of that. Unless you
Speak
say
now
otherwise.
or forever hold your peace.
You got it. All right, so we're back in regular session here. And that brings us, there's just one little item, which is 11.2. The Landfill and Waste Management Task Force. It says update on progress to date. Who's going to do that for us?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, is Brian still on the line? Brian
Sheridan?
Sheridan,
yes. Yes, Your Worship, I'm still on the system.
Well, thank you for your perseverance. Can you are you going to give the update, Brian?
Well, either myself or Councillor McEwen or Councillor Wood, they are the councillors on the task force.
You want me to
Okay. We have another meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. We're going to try and grind down some methodology to bring to council. As council is more than aware, one of the biggest challenges is to try and quantify what volume of waste may be allowed as exception and what streams we are serious about getting out of the two landfill sites. We've had lengthy discussion over those streams and the impact on the community. There's been more than considerable discussion about the impact on contractors with removing C&D and other waste that may be generated through contractors as opposed to homeowners. I think by and large the challenges that exist across the board with those have been put on the table by the task force. And even to last weekend where we saw some illegal dumping at the gate of York landfill. I think we should have all expected that. I think we all knew it was coming, that there would be some of that happening. And I think by and large the committee is persuaded that we're dealing with a minority of the population when it comes to that, and that a majority of the population really wants to see something done differently than has been done in the past. I would welcome comments from either of the councillors that are on the task force to those statements.
Councillor McEwen, I'll make a quick comment. You summed it up quite well, Brian. We have this meeting tomorrow to further address and try to get some better definition on C&D and what streaming we have to take there. I think, unfortunate as it is that we had to make the changes as quick as we did for COVID-19 and all that, it's been a bit of a test run in a sense at the two sites, and staffing changes and conditioning us all and everyone as ratepayers to look at what goes into the landfill as household stuff, and then the other controllable thing that we have a bit of a handle on, and that's the recyclable stuff, being the plastics and such, and then the cardboard fiber stuff. So yeah, the bigger, not bigger, but one of the biggest leftover issues is certainly the construction and waste, and can we afford to take a certain volume from each household or from small contractors, or what can we accept and still think of getting a long-term use out of the landfills? So Brian, you're having an assessment done of York, and it's been pushed back, and a lot of volume space made available. I believe you're having this person come in right away, possibly tomorrow or soon. Is that correct?
Through you, Your Worship, yes, we have the annual inspection by our environmental consultants is occurring on the 27th, and I'm going to be meeting them on site to go over the reshaping that we have done at York and to look at what we have been able to achieve with that. I would certainly underline the footnote that the hard decisions are there for council to face with in the very short term, I think.
Okay, well, thank you for that report. If there's nothing else, let's keep going. And I do want to express our appreciation to the task force for